Good morning, evening, or afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to Mortal Dilemmas. Today we have 5 true Glitch in the Matrix stories. Enjoy. This is a really weird experience that happened this past weekend. My boyfriend and I go to the movie theater at least twice a month, and we've been so stoked to see The Nun. So we go on Saturday to a 6:30 p.m. showing, and then grab dinner afterwards at Buffalo Wild Wings. Sunday morning, as we were eating breakfast, I mentioned a part of the movie. He asked me if I went to see the movie with my mom. I was so confused, but I thought he was messing with me, so I just looked at him and kind of laughed it off. He looked at me strangely and asked, "How was it?" I started getting freaked out and couldn't get words to come out of my mouth. I told him, "You saw it with me, and we ate wings after." Then he said, "No, I worked last night. It's my weekend." Now we were both confused. He showed me a text from his boss that was from 9:37 p.m., asking if he could stay until midnight, which he replied that he could. I thought at first maybe I was dreaming that we saw the movie, but I remembered every part of it, so obviously I did see it. He asked if I saw it with someone else, and for some reason my memory of it is with him, since we both wanted to see it so badly. But I remembered I took a video and posted it to my Snapchat while we were sitting in the theater waiting for the movie to start. It was no longer on my story, but the video was in my Snapchat memories. It even shows it was taken on that date at 6:23 p.m. I showed him, and now we're both confused. I'm trying to get a grasp on how this is possible, or what could have happened. So I work at a local restaurant, and last night I experienced possibly the strangest, most unexplainable thing of my entire life. It was a very busy Saturday night, with hundreds of people coming in to eat. Obviously, it gets pretty loud in the restaurant. Customers talking, workers yelling back and forth, the clanging of dishes and appliances, etc. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Well, that's where the strangeness comes into the picture. As the night went on, there was a very distinct moment in time where everything, and I mean everything, went completely silent. People stopped talking, moving, and working. There were no sounds from dishes or appliances. None of the customers were eating or speaking. I myself had just stopped to take a breather after carrying a heavy stack of plates. It was incredibly bizarre. This moment lasted for about 10 seconds or so, and everybody noticed it. The first sounds I could hear afterward were waitresses going, "Wow, it got super quiet, didn't it?" And, "What just happened?" Some of the customers joked about the food being so mind-blowing that it caused everyone to take pause. People kept discussing it for a while after that, and most simply chalked it up to some really weird coincidence. I've tried my best to discover the cause of this, but nothing comes to mind. What on earth could have triggered a moment of complete and utter silence in a hectic environment filled with hundreds of people? I know sometimes we experience a few brief moments where everything gets quiet for a few seconds, but never to this extent. This was different. I'm still spooked by it, to be honest. Long ago, I was just coming out of severe alcohol abuse and in recovery. Why this has anything to do with it, I don't know. I was working as a lab technician a couple of miles away. I had this old '69 Mustang. I ended up trashing that car, something I'm still kicking myself for. Anyway, I hated my work, so I'd always wait till the last minute to leave. This time though, I needed gas. Like, I wouldn't make it without stopping to put a couple of bucks in the tank. It had started out as sort of a weird day. I'd had a dog, a pretty rare breed, a Tibetan Mastiff. He was a really unusual dog, understood a lot more than most dogs. I thought of him as kind of my guardian. I think he thought so too. But he had died about 9 months before. I was still pretty upset about it. I lived in a studio apartment. The kitchen was in the living room, which was in the bedroom sort of place, on the ground floor. Maybe 800 square feet. It had huge windows that had an alleyway between buildings, and the front windows were facing a pretty busy street. That morning, getting ready for work, I thought I heard a dog whine. It was so loud, I went to the side windows to look out. Nothing. I heard it again, and realized it was coming from inside the apartment. I turned around from the windows, and there he was, tippity-tapping his front feet, and whining like he used to when he didn't want me to go somewhere. He was there for about 2 seconds, and then he blinked out. I got the sense of extreme danger. I shot up a quick prayer of protection, and then moved on. Work was not going to take a dog warning as anything other than I was cracking up. I'd had a lot of paranormal things happen, so I didn't consider it all that unusual to see things. So off I go to get gas, then on to work. You have to understand the layout here, but it's pretty easy. The gas station was at the northeast corner of an X intersection. It was the busiest intersection in town, each direction on both roads having 2 lanes, plus a left turn lane. It was famous for its accidents, fatal ones too. It was just a frustrating, busy road. All sides had signals. It was a main artery into town, so there were a lot of semis as well. So I come in from the northeast direction and pull into the station. I get my $2 worth of gas and hop back into my car. I'm planning on pulling back out onto the same road, then turning an immediate right. I'm in a hurry, look quick, nothing coming, and floor it. Like I'm immediately doing 25 to 30 miles per hour by the time I get to the curb. A tanker semi was approaching the intersection from the northeast direction at the same time as me. He's also going about 30 to 35 miles per hour. I slam on my brakes and scream, "God help." Those were the first words out of my mouth. Then it gets real weird. I have stopped, but the tanker is driving through me and my car. I have my hands on the steering wheel, I'm standing on the brakes, and I can see the engine, the transmission, and the underside of the truck as it passes through me. But I can see my hands in the interior of my car as well. There was a bit of a pulling sensation. That was all. The truck rolls on. I don't even think the driver knew I was there. I'm sitting with my car, stopped dead, blocking both lanes. There was no way he could have gotten around me. Now it gets weirder. As I said, this was a busy intersection. There's easily 30 cars occupying the road at this spot. I'm looking up at the traffic light, hyperventilating, and it cycles through 2 cycles. Green, yellow, red. Green, yellow, red. I'm just staring at it, and then the traffic around me. Everyone is staring at me with their mouths open, their eyes like gaping holes in the snow, and their noses jammed into their windshields. No one moves. Everyone just stares at me. We all just sat there for a good 2 minutes. Finally, I get my foot off the brakes, turn my car back to my lane. That's when I noticed I was in the middle of the street. There was no way in hell he could have missed me. I drove to work at about 10 miles per hour, shaking like a leaf. So there you are. Sometimes the universe decides, not yet. A couple of weeks ago, I discovered that my wife was having an affair. Then came the moment to confront her about it after having collected enough proof. She denied everything, and I just lost it. In a fit of pure rage, with a week's worth of fury, I took off my wedding ring and threw it out of the room with all my strength. We were near the kitchen table. She sat on a chair, and I was standing in front of her when I threw the ring. As I continued to accuse her while moving around the room, she sat still on the chair. After a couple of minutes, I noticed that the ring was on the table near her. I thought that the ring had ended up at her feet, and she picked it up. There was a very low chance of that happening, but not impossible. That was not important in the heat of what was happening, so I didn't ask. A couple of days pass, having both cooled off, and I asked her about the ring. She told me that she didn't pick it up. She thought I had. As furious as I was, I would never pick that ring up off the ground, for in the moment it was my intention to never touch it again. I remember clearly that I threw the ring with a downward movement, out of the room, and it bounced off the wall. That is the only thing I'm sure of. For context, the table height is a little less than 1 meter. I think it is impossible that the ring could end its course over the table. When I threw the ring, I was near the table, and I clearly remember the sound of the ring bouncing away. There was no way that it could end its course there. It was a Saturday night, about 2 weeks after we put the clocks back. We were watching TV and gaming. I was sitting at my computer across the room from the TV, while my wife was on the sofa watching a movie. I looked at the computer and saw it was 11:30 p.m., bedtime. I mentioned it to my wife, and she glanced at the time on the TV and the DVD box. Both said 11:30, and she mentioned it was later than she thought it was. I also checked my Verizon smartphone as she did hers, out of habit. 11:30 p.m. I shut down the computer, getting ready to walk the dogs. She shut down the TV, getting ready for bed. As I walked past the bedroom door, I glanced into the bedroom and saw the clock said 10 p.m. Now this clock is an older, electric digital clock. It doesn't get its time from anywhere. You set it by hand. My first thought was that I hadn't set it correctly when we set the clocks back 2 weeks ago. That didn't seem right though, because I'd used the alarm to get up numerous times since then and hadn't been late. So, maybe the clock had reset somehow. At any rate, I walked back to my desk to grab my phone so I could go set the clock to the correct time before going to bed. When I glanced at my phone, it said 10 p.m. I asked my wife what time was on her phone. 10 p.m. She turned the TV back on, and I booted the computer back up, both of us totally puzzled. Both devices said 10 p.m. I had checked the time before, as had she, several times on different devices. They'd all said 11:30 p.m. Now, suddenly, it was 10 p.m. again. We got an hour and a half to live over again, but not the same hour and a half. Not much, I admit, but definitely strange. The various devices do not all get their time cues from the same server either.